Good Council, you have in your homework what I'm calling the quarterly report, and it's published a bit early this quarter in order to bring to light recent events that have taken place on some of these items for discussion. I won't, unless you would like me to, I'll refrain from boring you with all the pages of engineering detail, because I know that you've obviously read all this and you have lots of questions. So perhaps, unless your wishes otherwise, I'll answer any questions you might have on the content of the report.
Could you answer the questions, why did the Ministry of Environment change their mind about our constructive wetland treatment, and why did they not tell us before that this was going to be changed?
For sure. That's a good question. Actually, there are actually two ministries here that are involved. My understanding is that, and this is prior to my coming on the village, the scene here, that the Ministry of Community Development had approved the grant application for the constructed treated wetlands. Now that grant application included other things than just the constructed treated wetlands. There was some sewer replacement and storm sewer construction, as well as a lime stabilization component. The Ministry of Environment, within the last few months, has questioned the earlier liquid waste management plan reports, stage 1 and stage 2 reports prepared by Anderson Consulting. And the reason why they were questioning that specifically was the official community plan amendment that took place in 2004. It substantially changed the basis for the original study material, particularly in terms of population projections and growth rates. So on that basis, the Ministry of Environment, not to be mistaken to the Ministry of Community Development, has suggested that those earlier reports need to be revisited. And in a meeting in December with the Ministry, that was clearly stated that by February they were going to give us a specific scope of items which they felt they wanted to have addressed. So having received that 12-page list of items they wanted to have addressed, it became clear to me that it was not likely that they were going to approve the liquid waste management plan. Well, they wouldn't until those items had come and been addressed. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's sort of how things have evolved over the time. And it occurred to me that if we could not achieve the approval of the Minister of the Liquid Waste Management Plan in time, we would not be able to take full advantage of the grant. Different ministry. So at a meeting in Victoria, that concern was addressed by Mayor Bates and Councillor Moncrief and our delegation to see if we could somehow salvage the grant and either extend the grant so that possibly this would come into play, or change the scope of the grant so we could get some other critical issues resolved within the village in the meantime. My understanding was that went well in Victoria, and subsequently we had a meeting in Nanaimo with staff who were instructed to deal with Cumberland to see what could be done in order to make sure that Cumberland got the grant. So as a result of that, my report was written, and the direction that I've taken for recommendation is to pull back the full wetland project to a pilot stage, where we could still conduct more tests. As you know, last summer we did a small portion of the pilot. We couldn't do the whole thing because there was insufficient funding available to do that. So we would construct the pilot stage this year. We would do more of the underground sewage replacement works. We would remove the solids from the sewage treatment lagoons. All those things designed to improve effluent quality. So we would be actually making improvements to Cumberland sewer system and reaching closer to the objectives of the ministry in other aspects.
Maybe I could
Just one further thing is, they're not saying there's anything wrong with the final outcome of what we've tried to do here, is there?
To answer your question, no, they have not said that the constructed treated wetlands is not the solution. However, what has happened within the past 18 months, year anyway, is that the regional district has embarked upon a regional sewage study. And they're saying, well, this liquid waste management plan should at least consider the study as either an addition to or replacement of the constructed treated wetlands. So they're not saying no, but they're not saying yes.
Right.
They're saying, let's study it further.
That's the comment I was going to make, is, and this is the frustration we said to the two ministers. Your ministry, community development, said you have a grant, you must spend it by March 2010, or you don't have a grant. The Ministry of Environment said, for all the background reasons, 2 years ago, you may recall, roughly 2 years ago, when they were looking at regional solutions, and we said, we had asked the Ministry of Community Services if it was possible that we contribute that grant toward a larger solution. They said, no, you were granted that based specifically on constructed treatment wetland. Now the Ministry of Environment says, you haven't considered enough alternatives to constructed treatment wetland, so you can't construct until you do that. And to do that, we would pass the March deadline. That's it in a nutshell. To be positive now, though, the Minister of Community Services did turn to his staff at that point and say, find a way to let Cumberland spend that money, change the scope, as long as the work you're doing contributes to whatever the long-term solution is. And so that's where you're at with this.
So what kind of sewer system would we end up with if we didn't end up with a constructed treatment wetland? I mean, if they're worried about the growth of the OCP in 2004, I'm sure they might be a bit surprised with the growth of the OCP from 2006, 2007. What would we end up with? Would it still be a green sewer system, or is it going to be just pipes and stuff?
Through your worship, the outcome of the liquid waste management plan will be determined from further study. The options at the moment appear to be could include a wetland, which is the original concept, with discharge to a regional system. It could include a variety of different treatment types. If you recall the process, the wetland is only one small component. It's large in size, but it's a small component of the overall treatment process. The biological treatment process today, and may continue to be the sewage treatment lagoons, the two cells that are there. In addition to that, the treatment system could in the future include a mechanical treatment facility to augment that existing treatment. Those are both biological treatment processes. What happens after that, after the biological treatment goes into the wetlands, and the purpose of the wetland was substantially to remove phosphorus from the effluent. Now, the wetland will do other things too. We'll remove suspended solids and continue the process of BOD reduction, which is also an improvement to the effluent quality. So it's a complicated package. It's not just the wetlands that we're talking about here. The liquid waste management plan includes sewage treatment as well as discharge of the effluent. So there's more to it than just the wetland.
So another question, with this map that you have attached here with the different areas, is that like digging up all of and putting in new storm and sewer lines?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there was, that was included in the original scope of work. So there was a limited amount of that in the scope of work. I believe there was 900 meters of sewer replacement and 250 meters of storm sewer construction. What we're suggesting here is that that was only a small portion of what is really required in the older core of the village. And what we could really spend that money wisely by doing more of that work, and that would reduce the amount of stormwater entering into the sanitary sewer and flooding out the lagoons during the wet weather period. So that, what you have in front of you, there's 3 areas that we've identified as being areas that we've discussed with the superintendent of works here, Kevin, and come to focus on areas where the village is most need of that work.
So then when the storm and sewer lines are separated, then you said the households have to re-hook up, make it efficient at that point in time, or can the pipes be put in and they hook up at a different time, or, I mean, the sewer, they're gonna wanna hook up to pretty darn quick if it's been disconnected from their house, but I mean, with splitting off the storm.
Right. I see that as a 2-step process. The initial process would be to install the pipes within the road right-of-way and install new service connections, 1 sewer service connection and 1 storm sewer service connection per lot. That would be the first, and take all of the catch basins that are currently hooked up to the sanitary sewer, which is contributing to the high water content at the lagoon. Take those and disconnect those from the sanitary sewer and put them where they should be within the storm sewer. The second step is a bit more difficult, and it would require a bylaw and making improvements from the property line to the houses. And that would then take marine water leaders from the houses where they are now connected to the sanitary sewer, disconnecting them from the sanitary sewer and hooking them up to the storm sewer. So that may not be something that can be done right away, but I think over time and with some bylaw enactment, that could probably take place.
But what if they're not hooked up to the, like what if their storm just goes, like older houses tend to have splash pads where they're, if they do have leaf troughs, they're coming down and they're just watering their garden, so that, what would they need to hook up to the storm sewer, like to the storm part of it for?
That's hard for me to say at the moment because there's all kinds of different situations,
Yeah.
but in that situation where there is no connection to the sanitary sewer of that nature, then the urgency of connecting that property to the storm sewer is less. Right, and there's methods of determining who's connected and who's not connected that we'll be doing that as we go along.
Well, I like the list that you've got here, Bob, and I guess deepening the existing lagoons and removing the solids. What I was going to ask you was, I know that system has been in for 40 years, so I guess would it be safe to say we might get at least half of that back? But by removing the solids, that extends the life of the lagoon further?
That's correct. I've chosen the words carefully here.
Sorry.
Because deepening the existing lagoon might be acceptable to the ministry. Removal of sludge from the lagoon is normally considered to be an operations and maintenance item. And I would like to see that done in the grant. That approval has yet to come. I've been asked to provide a new set of job project description to the ministry, and that is certainly on my list, and I wanted to have this meeting this evening before I finalize my list and took it to Victoria for their approval.
So the removal will just be the method of making it legal.
Right.
Right.
I guess I'm confused. That has been done by our public works guys in the past. A little bit of taking the solids. We're talking about a large scale.
Yeah, I
Would
believe
that be an in-house or? No, it's a very big project.
I think traditionally, Your Worship, that the solids, and I could be corrected by Kevin here if he could, limited reach with equipment available certainly not to the scope that we need to get for better performance. So we're talking about dredging or other similar methods that would take the solids out completely from the center. There are aerators there now that are operating on the surface, but there's only a limited depth that they can perform in. It needs to be
Okay,
that far.
Councilor Barrett.
My question's more for the administrator. The Constructive Wetland Treatment Committee, has they met to discuss this?
No, we haven't had a meeting yet.
Will they be having a meeting to discuss?
I think part of what they require is a public process, so they want to see this go through probably the PAC and the TAC, Technical Advisory Committee as well. So this is just the initial review. That's my understanding, that they want the public involved in this as well as council.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay,
So to reiterate, the idea of the constructed treatment wetland is not done with.
Oh,
It's
no.
just postponed till we go through all the proper reviews. Okay.
Just because we couldn't do it in time to
Yes.
use the money.
Okay.
And if I could just comment, Your Worship, on that further. There is an opportunity, and the Ministry of Community Development has expressed some interest in pursuing the pilot stage in order for us to get more information on building peat on peat, which it's a fairly touchy process, and I really welcome their enthusiasm to do that, because I would rather get more information on how that is going to work. The initial, just for your information, the initial work we did last year on building one side of it to establish settlement rates and see how the performance looked is encouraging. It is still settling, and it will for some time, but it is pretty much behaving as we had expected.
Okay. Okay,
Would you consider doing these, what you were recommending in here, still being, using green infrastructure?
I'm sorry, you have, if you could tell me
Well,
what you mean
part of
by green.
Well, we're supposed to expand our sanitary sewer capacity by pursuing green infrastructure design principles. So is this helping with the green infrastructure design principles? It's one of our policies of the village.
Your Worship, yes, it does. By removing what we call infiltration and inflow from the sanitary sewer, we're moving strongly in the direction which the Ministry of Environment would like us to proceed to reduce the impact on the downstream environment.
okay. You have two recommendations before you.
Have a bylaw in progress with third reading regarding financing for the constructive treatment wetland. However, we felt that because the bylaw would need to go through a public assent process, and because council had previously taken it to third under the premise that it would be the constructive treatment wetland project, we felt compelled to bring this back to you to reconsider, given that the scope of the project has changed. Obviously, this probably seems a little premature, in that we're still working out the specifics of the next project, but I think for reasons you've all described, there's some urgency to it, loss of the grant. The other issue is the crews can be able to do some of this work, and that would be in the summer months. The public assent process required for a loan authorization bylaw will take a minimum of 6 weeks, and this bylaw will also have to go to the municipal inspector prior to that. So there's a certain amount of timing problem so that we can go to tender in June on the construction projects. And that's why this is before you, somewhat premature. You will not have to adopt it until it has gone through municipal assent and public assent, and hopefully by then we have, you know, a very good understanding of where the project is going. But we do need to start the financing process. So if there's any questions to that, I would certainly answer them, and if I could ask that the recommendation is put on the agenda. I just noticed that some of the wording on the first point at the very end, the last sentence says, but hereafter referred to as the village sewer improvement project. We'd actually like to change that to village sewer water and drainage improvement project, please.
Okay, what's your pleasure? Okay,
So if we're gonna be borrowing this amount of money, I think it's ultimately about 1.731 million is the end of what we need. Right now it's 3 something, but how much is that gonna cost each property owner
Okay.
on average, based on if we get a good interest rate of the 5% and the 20-year amortization that's in the report.
Your worship, if you'd like that. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go into the final decision of where that debenture would be put in 2 to 3 years from now, and rates could change substantially. However, I did do a quick and dirty calculation, thank you, Councillor Greening, for giving me a little bit of a heads up. Just based on today's rates for a 20-year debenture, a 20-year amortization period, based on current assessment values and current residential values and current, I mean, obviously there's a lot of assumptions, so please, I don't quote me on this 3 years from now, but it looks to me like with the grant, it would be about $125 if it went by property taxes versus utility rates. And if we don't have the grant, it'll cost us close to $370 a household. So we really will probably want to exercise that grant or be in a position to.
But if it was done as a parcel tax, then it's based on frontage, right? Or would it be just done on, like, is that 125 just based on each property, like not some would pay more and some would pay less, or just an average?
Your worship, at this time, I just crunched the number on property taxes, as we are substantially funding still the utilities with property taxes.
That's right.
So anything over and above our current utility rates. If you went to utility rate instead, I haven't crunched it again in terms of business, but the residential homeowner generally picks up the bulk, since we don't have a very commercial residential industrial base, or commercial industrial base. So it's fair to say that it would probably be in the similar lines to run it into the utility if you looked at the number of portfolios. And still have to recover the cost.
Anyone else? Okay.
I'd like to move the recommended resolution, subject to the changes as noted by Christine, water and drainage project, this change that village sewer improvement project.
Okay, you're moving the first recommendation?
Yep.
Both, okay. Moved and seconded?
Can I ask a question? Why do you have to stop calling it the constructed treatment wetland project? If it's still, the end result is they're hoping to get there.
Because you're adding water and drainage, because that's where we've changed the scope into water and drainage.
I thought our engineer just finished saying the water and drainage was part of what was needed for the constructed treatment wetland.
Would you like to comment?
Your worship, you can call it whatever you'd like. I don't mind if you change it back. I just really was concerned that the public and council understand there's a difference in scope.
That's right.
And this made it more clear.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, as amended, all in favor? Opposed?